bin smoke. That's where my money goes. In my lungs and sometimes up my nose. When troubled times begin to bother me,
Good morning. We gather here today to celebrate the life of Robert William COULTAS, known to all as Bob. Family and friends, today we pay our respect to a gentleman, a brother, uncle, a colleague and friend. Each of you have shared your own relationship with Bob, and you'll have many memories of the relationship that you shared. I'm Graham Sayre, and I'm very privileged to have been asked to conduct this service for Bob today. Thank you for being here today, especially those of you who have travelled. Your presence with us is very much appreciated. Dave COULTAS, Bob's brother, passes on his thanks to you all. He knows you will honour Bob's life as Bob would have wanted. He's sorry he can't join you today. Also, Booney, Daniel Boone, who Bob lived with in Victoria for 7 years, sends his sympathy he is unable to be with us today. It's also important on days like this that we remember people special to Bob, those who have passed away but are not forgotten. We particularly remember Bob's mother Catherine and his brother Mark, and also Bob's man's best friend, his dog Badger. They are all reunited again. Linda Ellis has written a rather poignant poem called The Dash. I read of a man who stood to speak at a funeral for a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke of the following date with tears, but said what mattered most was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time we spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we lived and loved, and how we spent our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that still can be rearranged. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a while. So when your eulogy is being read, your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you lived your dash? This time we spend together today is to remember Bob, and while we think of his passing with sadness and regret, we should recall his life with respect and happiness. You see, nothing can detract from the happiness and closeness you shared with Bob. Nothing can affect the happiness and joy of life that Bob knew. And nothing can change your love for him and his love for you. He can never be altered by time, circumstance, or even death. What has been the past and all its meaning is sacred and secure. So be grateful that Bob was part of your lives and let his influence, his character, his warmth and his deeds live on. I was privileged to spend some time recently with good friend Nathan and received some information from Bob's brother Dave, and I share that with you now. Robert William COULTAS was born on the 20th of September 1968 at Auburn Hospital in Sydney's West to Brian and Catherine COULTAS. He was the youngest of 3 children, with 2 older brothers, Mark and David. The family lived in Yagoona until 1980 when the parents divorced. His mother and the boys moved to Hazelbrook in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, where at a young age Bob, as he liked to be called, discovered his love of the bush. Many a time his brothers were sent down to Horseshoe Falls to drag him home before the night set in. Bob finished his schooling at St Columba's High School and after that found himself in many different jobs. He worked as a truck driver's off-sider, delivering beer to outlets in the city and mountains, and held that job for a few years. The act of throwing beer kegs around all day on a diet of not much more than Weet-Bix saw Bob grow from a bit of a scrawny kid into a decent-sized fellow. He was quite a popular bloke around the mountains, and his relaxed personality as well as his love of bourbon gave him the name Bourbon Bob. Bob never had contact with his father after the divorce and was quite close to his mother. When she passed in 1993, he moved out of the mountains for a while to Victoria. He returned and lived with his mate in Hartley Vale, where they worked as painters. He lost contact with his elder brother Mark when he moved to the UK, but still kept in regular contact with his middle brother Dave and became godfather to Dave's youngest daughter Abby. Bob eventually moved to South Australia to meet up with his mates he made on earlier travels in Victoria. He at times could be considered antisocial. It took effort to break through to him and get to know him, something you had to work at, I'm told. Bob was witty and a joker. He would give you the shirt off his back. He was regularly doing things for others. During the height of the COVID lockdowns, he would drop off essentials to people in the local community. Bob enjoyed fishing, gold panning, and fossicking for gems and bird watching. He was a minimalist by choice and thought people had too much stuff. He was happy in his swag under a tree rather than in a mansion. Bob loved his dog Badger, a long-time friend to him who has passed away. In the early 2000s, Moonta became home to Bob and was one of the few places where Bob stayed for a long time. Bob had many jobs in the area, including looking after the bowling greens, working at the grain silos, driving the train at the mines for a time to list a few, and finally was the greenkeeper here for the dunes. Bob was only visiting Moonta and planned to stop for only a week. He never left. According to him, apparently SA and this area had the best hooch. Sadly, Bob passed away on the 3rd of January 2024 at the age of 55. Bob's good friend Nathan has a tribute to Bob to share with us.
Well, look at this.
Come on, Jane.
Bob would have fucking hated all of it. So many people.
Where'd she go?
I can't really see what I've written here, so. Technical difficulties.
Sorry, the button was hidden.
Yeah.
Where do you want it?
This side. Hey, that's better. Alright, so today we gathered to pay homage and revel in the memories of an extraordinary individual, Robert COULTAS. known by an array of names to a great many people. Pirate Bob, Bourbon Bob, Bearded Bob, Bird-watching Bob, not the kind through the window of your house either, Uncle Bob, Brother Bob, Movie Star Bob, that's right, he had his claim to fame back in 98, 99 in a movie, Antisocial Bob, and Talkback Bob, probably one of the most annoying ones. Each of these titles provided a glimpse into the diverse facets of his lively and unique personality. Bob embodied greatness. His contagious zest for life echoed the untamed freedom of the Australian outback, particularly the Blue Mountains, where he spent his formative years. Australia wasn't merely his home, it was the very core of his being, and he took great delight in its expansive landscapes and the hidden treasures it cradled. Gold panning, metal detecting, and fossicking for gems like opal were not just pastimes for Bob. They were integral to his way of life. Bob's version of opal mining was actually kind of funny. Up at Lightning Ridge there, he would walk around the tailings and he'd be smoking a joint while the locals are digging through all the rubbish, and he'd be making sure that it's a nice big joint, smelt good, he'd waft it in their direction. Then he'd go find a nice shady tree next to his Bedford and sit down and have a bourbon and wait for the locals to come up and try and swap their gems for a joint or two. So if you ever try it, you got to wait until they come back the second time for the good stuff. Never hand over your joint on the first round. Yet what truly defined Bob was his appreciation for life's simple pleasures. A bona fide bourbon connoisseur. Many nights were spent in the company of his closest companion Billy, not a human friend, his trusted bong, with whom he shared both the highs and lows of life. It was Billy that he would not only partook in his herbs that brought him delight and tranquility, but also engaged in profound and meaningful conversations. Bob lived life on his own terms, choosing solitude over glamour of the world and finding joy in life's bare essentials. His love for the natural world and his knack for finding delight in life's small details should be an invaluable lesson for all of us. Despite his general disdain for most people, Bob had a unique talent for making them feel like friends and would say g'day to anyone. He enjoyed giving directions to strangers, normally hilariously leading them to the nearest cemetery, where he sent countless families. Although he professed to hate everyone, Bob would go to great lengths to help almost anyone in need. Whether jump-starting a car or lending a tool, his assistance came at a great cost of enduring a good-natured ribbing for the rest of your life. As we say farewell to Bob, let us remember the man who embraced life, appreciating the beauty in rugged landscapes and choosing the paths less travelled. May his spirit continue to roam freely in the vastness he held dear, and may his memory remind us to cherish life's simple joys each day. Rest in peace, Bob, amid the tranquil serenity you so cherish. Your absence will be felt, your memory will endure unforgotten. And in Bob's words, if he was here today, and I don't think we have any kids, so we're good, you wankers, fuck off and leave me alone. Didn't want a funeral. Go get shit-faced and enjoy yourselves. Life's too short for somber gatherings. Fuck off. I hated all of you. Bob's cheeky spirit and candid nature remind us that he wouldn't want us to mourn. So let's heed his words and raise a glass or a billy and share the stories of a man who lived life on his own terms. Stories like when Bob went abseiling down a creek with a bucket on his head. Or the time we drove his Bedford from Brighton, Victoria, all the way to Moonta, while I poured petrol in the carby because the fuel pump was fucked. Or one of the many, many times he tried to smoke himself straight again. Fuck you, Bob.
Thank you, Nathan. Jack also has a tribute to Bob.
Hi, my name is Jack O'Connell for people that don't know me. I'd like to thank everyone here today in spirit and who was here today to celebrate Bob's life. I would like to formally apologise now for the language I'm about to use in my speech, but Bob wouldn't want it any other fucking way. The first time I met Bob was in my 20s at my so-called living the dream life at Work for the Dole in Moona Mines. Seeing this bloke for the first time, I was curious and I wanted to know who he was. So he approached me and said, "How you going, cunt? I'm Bob." Shortly after, we were smoking cones in his old white Hilux ute, talking stories like we knew each other for years. What I like most about Bob is he never judged anyone, and he always tried to steer me in the right direction. Bob is one of the people that helped me become the person I am today, and not the person that I was yesterday. Bob was one of the nicest blokes I've ever met and would help me whenever I would ask him. I have many fond memories with Bob, but have too many to say today. A lot of them with his good mate Paul Warren. Where every Friday afternoon at the start at Paul's workshop next to the Royal, and then at Paul's shed at his home. The banter and the payouts we used to give each other, you would have thought that we actually fucking hated each other. But that's how we loved it. I don't think my life will ever be the same without Bob. He was a true legend, but surely I'm going to see you again one day, mate. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Jack. And finally, Ron Bock from the Copper Club would like to pay tribute to Bob.
On behalf of the Copper Club staff, board and members, we'd all like to thank Bob for being such an integral part of the Copper Club team for the past 5 years. Bob was a very talented and passionate greenkeeper here at the Copper Club and will be sorely missed. Bob is a huge reason that this property out here looks as good as it does today. Bob was famous around the club for finding lost golf balls in the rough for our members. Bob would often see a member hit a ball astray and head out to find it later in the day, only to return it to the member the next time they played. I think he memorised nearly every brand of golf ball that each member used. It's safe to say that our golf ball sales have gone down in the pro shop since Bob has worked for us. We had no reason to sell them because he found them all. Bob was also a keen inventor, modifying a lot of our coarse machinery to hold rakes, shovels and other hand tools. Most of these were made out of PVC pipe. Me and Paul called him our very own bush mechanic. Bob would also used to attach a fork of the cutlery variety to the end of a rake handle so they didn't have to bend over and pick weeds. Work smarter, not harder, he said. One of the funniest moments on the golf course that I experienced with Bob was when he was driving around in one of our utility carts on the course while doing some jobs. He had a 50-litre drum half full of water rolling around in the back of the tray on the golf cart. When he stopped, I stood the drum up and said, "There you go, Bob." And he goes, "Please put that back down. I'm doing my washing." Bob had his clothes in the drum. He would find a way to do something without paying for electricity. Bob, as mentioned previously, Bob was a very keen bird watcher. Myself and Paul often catching him in the maintenance yard with a pair of binoculars and his bird book, excited by the fact that he'd seen a new bird on the course which he hadn't come across before. Bob was also very up to date on the world of politics, believe it or not, and he was always the first person at work where he would have his cup of tea and a transistor radio going every morning in the shed, followed by all day with his earmuffs on with his inbuilt radio, which he listened to the news, I think, all day. My recent memory of political education from Bob was when the war in Gaza started, where Bob gave me a full scope rundown of the different religions in Israel and what they were fighting for. Bob was such a kind and thoughtful man and would always go out of his way to help others, even at the expense of looking after himself. This was just who he was, and we couldn't tell him otherwise, even though myself and Paul tried many times to bloody look after yourself, Bob. Rest in peace, Bob. You will always be a part of the Copper Club family and will be remembered for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowan. Generally, at this time in the service, if we were inside a building, we'd have a slideshow or presentation of pictures. Bob, however, collected warrants in his younger days, and there are more warrants than pictures of himself. So we'll take a moment now to reflect on our own relationship with Bob as we listen to Up in Smoke from the Cheech and Chong movie.
Up in smoke, that's where my money goes. In my lungs and sometimes up my nose. When troubled times begin to bother me, I take a toke and all my cares go up in smoke.
Up in smoke, donde todo es libre. There are no signs que dicen no fume. So I roll un bomber y me doy un buen toque. Y después I choke y todos mis cares go up in smoke. Come on, let's go get high. Up in smoke, that's where I wanna be. 'Cause when I'm high, the world below don't bother me. When life begins to be one long and dangerous road, I take a toke and all my cares go up in smoke. I take a toke and all my cares go up in smoke.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to draw your attention to your memorial cards today, on the back of which is an amazing poem written by Nathan Barr. Please take your time to have a read of that later on. It comes now for a time to say our farewell to Bob. Bob, you were a great mate and you hated everyone equally. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose here on earth. A time to be born and a time to die. In sadness at Bob's death, but with appreciation for his life, we remember Bob and acknowledge the significance and value he has brought to your lives. And now it's time to say a final goodbye, committing his body to be cremated and thus committing his memory to our hearts for the rest of our days. Rest in peace, Robert William COULTAS, our Bob. I'd like to invite Andrew Skinner to come forward for the conclusion of the service today.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the service here this morning for Bob. You're invited to come forward before we leave here to sign the coffin or leave a memory on the coffin. For Nathan was asking if you could leave that memory for Bob on there of the times that you spent with him. Then we'll ask the bearers to come forward as we leave here today. And then you're invited, as Bob would say, to the cemetery, but no, to the Copper Coast Club for light refreshments and a chance to celebrate Bob's life. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to come forward to pay your tributes here and grab a pen and make a signature, and then once we're ready, I'll announce the bearers to come forward. Thank you.
Hey, true blue, give it to me straight, face to face. Are you really disappearing? Another dying race. Hey, true blue, hey, true blue. Is it me? Is it mom and dad? Is it a cockatoo? Is it standing by your bed when he's in the fight? Or just fish true. Is your heart still there? If they slice us up like sponge cake, do you really care? Just to keep the show on the road. Pretty blue, is it me? Is it mom and dad? Is it a cockatoo? Is it standing by your place when he's in a fight? Or just his mind? True blue.
Yeah, that's all we'll do, because you probably don't know your way around here. After the bay, I'll ride back with you to the clubhouse, and then I'll take your bike home. Are you going back to the clubhouse here for a drink? Yeah, yeah, cool. So I'll get you back there, and then I'll take your bike home. All right? Easy. Not a problem at all. Right, I'll figure that out. Good mate of your funeral in the last year. All under the age of fucking 60. Really?
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I thank you for your love and support by being here for Bob today. I invite the pallbearers to come forward as we head over to the hearse and we leave here. If you didn't want to sign the coffin, you can actually make a tribute with lavender or rosemary or a petal over there so that you can take your final memory with Bob. I ask the pallbearers to come forward. Thank you.
I want to go with them. $5 is